had a serious depression in my adolescence, and it was writing that got me through it.
Now, this is where writing can be almost dangerous.
That was not helpful processing. Here, I went into the shadows and I got stuck and I stayed a while.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Examined Life Daily. I'm Bob.
I'm Autumn.
And today we want to talk to you about how, if you're going to examine your life, what are you going to do with all that information you're gaining? And what we want to encourage you today in this video is to get a notebook. I have always just used plain old dollar notebooks from Walmart. Of course, they're more than $1 now, but you get the idea. Or I've also at times used a real actual diary. I've used leather diaries. You have a lot of choices. But for me, I just keep this, and mainly it's video notes, and I go back and through them occasionally. So this is the way it works for me. But there are many, many ways, and a lot of you will benefit tremendously from just a simple writing habit, however works for you. And there are so many ways to do it that we're actually going to make 2 videos out of this.
I believe in the power of writing so much. It's something that I've long gravitated to. I started writing when I was a child, and so it's kind of just a combination of a healing modality, an intention modality, a creative outlet, but I think it is perfect for the examined life. And because I personally have just loved writing so much, and I've been writing in diaries since I was 7 years old, I really incorporated it quite significantly into my work as a therapist. So today what I want to share is 3 evidence-based reasons why having a regular writing practice can just have a therapeutic benefit. It can be both healing, but it can also be a source of inspiration.
And so we'll do a second video of a list of 20 different methods you can use. There are a ton of methods, and some of them won't work for you. Maybe you don't want to keep a diary. I don't want to keep a diary, and I never would. But there are so many methods. One of them is bound to work for you. So we'll talk about those in more detail on another video.
Yes. Well, let's dive into 3 evidence-based reasons that having a regular writing practice can just help with your overall well-being. And the first is cognitive clarity. So we have a lot going on in our minds all the time. In fact, that's one of the benefits of an examined life, to say, okay, so much is going on in here. It can be chaotic. How do I put some order to it? And so by having a writing practice, and that could be structured or it could be free flow, but just the practice of writing is already putting order and organization to what could be chaos inside of our minds. And the significance of that psychologically then goes to the second psychological benefit of writing, which is emotional regulation. When we don't have a lot of clarity, when we have a great deal of chaos in our minds without some organization, we can feel anxious. We can feel flustered. We can start one project and shift to the next so fast that we actually don't feel like we're actually making movement. So the cognitive clarity stabilizes our emotions, and we kind of have this grounded sense of like, okay, I can see clearly. I feel better as a result. I feel capable. I feel like I have efficacy. And then I can do stuff, whatever it is that the writing inspires, whatever's going on in here, that's how you can bring it out into the world.
Absolutely. As I've said before, I've been to a lot of 12-step meetings, and I was in a 12-step meeting once, and a woman said that her problem was drugs. And she said, as soon as I came to AA and started, I lost all desire for drugs and alcohol, and it never returned. But she said, the craziness in her mind, that chaos, also drastically, greatly diminished. But she found that if she didn't continue in the meetings, it slowly returned until she knew that if that craziness continued in her mind, that chaos, the weird thinking, that she was going to use again. And so she said she had to keep going to meetings, not because she wanted to not use again, but because that craziness in her mind would drive her to it ultimately, but that it made her life miserable.
So when there's chaos, a stabilizing, consistent rhythm. So whether that's the meetings, the AA meetings where there's a verbal expression and sharing in the meetings, and it's kind of like the process of journaling, it's examination, but it's consistent. It's regular. It's like a drum. A drum is sort of the foundation of all music. And music, basically, the more steady the drum is, the more sort of leaps and bounds the other instruments can take because it has that groundedness. So the meetings, the writing is very much like that process. And a third evidence-based benefit of a regular writing practice is identity integration. So Bob and I have talked quite a bit about Carl Jung and internal family systems, and the process of writing, even accidentally, can sort of help us see these different parts within us. It can help us identify our shadow. See, we can write down and be like, okay, these are my private thoughts and it's uncensored and I'm just saying everything. There's no mask. There's no sense of, filtering what the world might see. Here I am being brutally honest with my thoughts and feelings and impulses, and it's written down. And we can really get to know ourselves very well that way.
And it's important to go back and gain from it. You're not going to live in the past, but you're going to start seeing a pattern. To my mind, a lot of it is seeing the pattern of your thoughts and your behavior and what's going on inside. We've had videos on the Stoics, and it's taking that bird's eye view of yourself.
Yes, and you mentioned Stoicism, and we have talked quite a bit about Stoicism and Marcus Aurelius. But Bob, would you like to share briefly about how Marcus Aurelius and his personal writings and diaries and examinations changed the world?
Right. Yeah, I love Marcus Aurelius. We have a video on the Stoics, and if you follow my quotes of the day, Marcus Aurelius is in them all the time. He is just someone who's a tremendous human being that I admire and want to be like. And he was a Roman emperor, and he would go off, take the army off, and go to war. And he was deeply dedicated to philosophy and right living, being the best human being he could be. And so he wrote out a diary. It was just his diary, just exactly what we're talking about. And later on, and he never shared any of it with anybody. That was just not what he wanted. He was private. And later on, they found his writings and they published it as the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. You can buy it today. I would very deeply encourage you to buy it. It's just an excellent, it's life-changing. And so there's an example of someone who kept a diary, changed his life, changed the lives of millions of Romans in his time, and profoundly impacted my life. And if you follow my quotations, has had an impact on yours as well.
I love Marcus Aurelius. I quote him all the time as well. I have a quote from Marcus Aurelius where he kind of speaks directly to this. One of the things he shares is he says, put your desires in order, tame your impulses, lay out your principles. And this whole discussion we're having on writing is he really practiced that through his diaries.
Yeah, it's very, very personal. If he had a rough time that day with a certain issue, it would end up in his diary, and he would give himself orders. When you run into these kinds of people, this is how you act. And then he would go back and read that and remember it, and it would change his life.
Another person I want to share who had a diary that changed the world is Anne Frank. She was 13 years old, 13, 14 years old when she had this diary. And she aspired to be a writer, and she wrote down the raw, bitter, unfiltered truth of what she was experiencing in the isolation. Anne Frank basically was in hiding from the Nazi regime and stayed in hiding for quite some time. She wrote about some of the challenging situations that occurred in her family dynamic as a result of being in hiding. The power her writing had not only for her own well-being, but then later to really shine light onto the atrocities of the Holocaust. She wrote this, and again, she was 13 or 14 years old when she wrote this. She said, I can shake off everything as I write. My sorrows disappear. My courage is reborn. That almost makes me cry, thinking about such a young soul having so much wisdom and a practice to get her through the atrocities that there was. And so, kind of like we referenced Frankel and his experience in the Holocaust, when somebody goes through those kind of things and has found something to help stabilize them and make meaning of it, that is definitely a practice I want to adopt.
Yes, absolutely.
I had a serious depression in my adolescence, and it was writing that got me through it. And I'd actually like to share what I did with my writings because this is an option. I would write. It helped keep me steady enough to get through the really serious depression and into the next day. It helped me be honest with myself. It gave me a place where I felt like I could say anything, the darkest, the most awful, the most angry, the most sorrowful things. I could say it. And it no longer was in me, it was out onto the paper. What I ended up doing in my late 30s, actually right before I became a nomad, I carried those journals with me for, gosh, that's 20 plus years. And I decided I didn't want them anymore. I could release that. It helped me get through, but I also didn't need to carry all that pain. So I had this really beautiful kind of ceremony, kind of ritual out in the forest where I burned them. And that was so healing and it was so transformative. And I literally felt like I released a weight. So, one of the practices that you can take with you as you are writing is freeform writing, almost like a stream of consciousness. And so, not necessarily any structure, you're just writing what you feel like. This is an area where you don't have to sort of contain your impulses, just put it out there on the paper. And in a lot of my own sort of free flow writing, I love being poetic. I love beautiful prose. I love both reading them and writing them. And actually, sort of accidental shameless plug here, but my YouTube channel, Autumn and Chloe, that is my digital diary. It's the way in this 21st century that I took what I've done my whole life, just writing my whole life, and put it into form with music, with visual, and telling a story. And oftentimes, my personal favorite part of those videos are where I'm sort of describing the landscapes or describing the inner landscape that's going on as I'm out exploring in this wonderful life. So that's one way that you can practice writing, just free flowing, maybe pretty, maybe poetic, but it doesn't have to be.
Second one we would highly recommend to you is to write out a fear list. As you go through your day, you write out what you're afraid of. Now, we deceive ourselves by using different words. Well, I'm not afraid of this. I'm just a little concerned. Well, write that down. Write down all these worries and concerns and genuine fears and be really deeply honest. And what I love to do is to go back and look over them. And what you're going to find is they're almost never come true. It's something that I have exaggerated in my mind. The psychological term is called catastrophizing. I take this thing, which is really, it's just a minor concern, and I turn it into this big catastrophe, and I play it over and over again, and I swallow it, and I bring it back up, and I chew on it, and I swallow it, and it can become largely dominating our lives. So the more you're aware of what you're afraid of, you can see the patterns in it. You can see that they never happen. It's a very, very useful tool.
One of the things I love so much about the fear list is by doing it, it's facing it. And when we face our fear and say, I'm looking it square in the face, one of the most common responses, automatic responses to fear is avoidance. The fear list is, I'm not avoiding, I'm looking at it. And in that process, we're telling ourselves, I'm capable and I can handle this. And so that examination of the fear can really give us confidence.
There's a famous quote from Mark Twain that I really like, and this is going to be a bit of paraphrase, but it's awfully close. He said, I'm old now and I've lived a long life, and I've been through a lot of really bad things, and some of them actually happened. So what he meant was they played out over and over and over again in his mind, and they became real to him, and very few of them actually happened.
Love that. Another journaling practice that you can take with you is something akin to Ben Franklin. We talked in depth about Ben Franklin's practice that he had every single day. You can see that in this video right here. And I was really excited when we talked about this because I realized I'm like, whoa, I've done something sort of like Ben Franklin for a little while. For quite some time, I've had a practice where I start the day with an intention. Here is my intention for today. And then later in the evening, I revisit it in a really structured format. So I revisit, how well did I do at living out my intention for this day? And then I say, where do I need to take accountability? What did I do well today? And I just write a couple sentences. It's not necessarily at great length unless I'm just in the mood for great length. And then I write down 3 things I'm grateful for, as well as a highlight of my day. So it's a really structured practice. That's a bit different than Ben Franklin's, but there's some overlap. And Bob, I know you've shared before about kind of that power of accountability in daily reflection.
I kind of think of it as shadow work. If you follow us very long, you know, we both love Carl Jung. And one of the most important things I think he talks about is the shadow. And these things that we're embarrassed about in ourselves or ashamed of, or maybe they're perfectly fine, but our parents don't like them, so we stuff them. Or society doesn't like them, so we stuff them. And they get down into this and they become this toxic soup of becoming the shadow. So a lot of what I look to do in my writing is find the shadow and look at it really honestly. Now, this is where writing can be almost dangerous. We're just talking about finding all the positive and the good things. Absolutely essential. But you know, in this working with the shadow, you have to be pretty careful because you can get in there and find more than you're ready to find. So I like to be completely aware of my strengths, what I'm doing right. I like to celebrate them. Nothing wrong with that. But I also want to know my flaws, my weaknesses, my character defects. At the end of the day, I just find out, what did I do wrong? How did I hurt someone today? Do I owe somebody an apology? So celebrate the positive, become aware of the negative.
It's so powerful, and I'm so glad you gave kind of a warning disclaimer because there's several of them. The one you just mentioned is shadow work. I think of that as akin to psychological surgery. If you're going into the depths and the darkness of your own soul, careful. And it's helpful to have a friend there with you. Hopefully you can. And just another disclaimer that came to mind as you were sharing this is careful about rumination. One of the reasons I elected to burn my teenage journals is, as powerful and as helpful as they were, I could glance at them and look back and see that was not helpful processing. Here, I went into the shadows and I got stuck and I stayed a while. And then I was just in the darkness. So there's a feel, I think, to anything, whether it's writing or any kind of healing, where you can start to feel, is it losing its benefit? And so that's a really important thing.
Very, very important.
So the fifth way that I love having a journaling practice is very, very new. It's with ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a journal that talks back to you. And you can ask it to give you feedback in whatever style you prefer it to give you feedback. That's this incredible thing with AI. I never thought I would be such an advocate for AI. I actually thought it was probably something I'd have a little resistance to, and I've just dove in. There are some risks with ChatGPT in journaling. One is confidentiality. So it saves your work unless you clear it. So if you're processing something really personal, unless it's on a very personal device, just know that there's that risk. But what I love about ChatGPT is you can say, give me prompts on reflection today. Or you can just share, this is my daily diary, and here's what I'm processing. What feedback do you have for me? That can be an incredibly powerful, nearly therapeutic way to process things. In terms of cost with ChatGPT, you can get a free account. Now it's limited. It's only going to give you a limited amount of responses back, but that might be all you need. It's actually quite a lot. I think it's something like 300. You'll have to fact check me on that. Or you can do what I do, which is have a paid account. I pay $21 a month for unlimited responses so that I don't end up getting cut off because I find it so useful.
Like everything we're going to present to you, it's take it or leave it. I would encourage you to try it. I mean, you at least should try things. But if you try it a couple days and you say, I'm never doing this again, that's fine. This is just something to try out and see. It's a take it or leave it on everything we say or do. We're all such different people. Something that works for me won't work for you. It might work for Autumn. It won't work for me. We just have to try it and see, and take what works, leave what doesn't.
And that's the beauty of the exam in life, knowing ourselves to see what jives with me to create benefit in my life. Well, folks, I'd be curious to hear from you. Do you have a writing practice that has been really helpful for you that you'd like to share with folks who read the comments? And I'd also be curious if there's other outlets, because writing is such an artistic outlet. Maybe it's painting, maybe it's photography. But I'd just be curious, what has sort of given your life groundedness and story? And thank you so much for watching. We hope you got something out of this video. Definitely hit that thumbs up button, comment below, and subscribe to our channel. We'll see you next time.
Bye now.